I wasn't supposed to be doing this rumble. In reality, today's video was going to be a video called In Defense of the Lumbridge Crater, where I would go over why I think the Lumbridge Crater is important and why I think that the God Saga was important for the game, and how we could use lessons learned from the God Saga in order to remove the crater if that was really a pressing matter. But unfortunately, they just apparently already removed it, so it's not like I have time to defend it anymore. So instead, you're gonna get a ramble where I'm gonna rant about the fact that jagex just keeps deleting content, at least in RuneScape. Like, in old school, the only, like, content change, like actual content change that I remember jagex doing was with current favor. Like, they removed current favor and they removed, like, the plows and stuff like that. They removed some of the ways to gain favor in current, but most of them still remain. Like, you can still do a lot of the activities that would grant you favor, and that's like the only one I remember. Like, I don't remember them removing like pieces of content outright, generally speaking, because old school does try their best to, okay, if this piece of content isn't used or isn't healthy for the game, can we change it? Can we introduce things to it that will make it better for the game? Like the dual arena, right? Incredibly problematic place for the game. Okay, let's replace the dual arena then with an arena that is actually like focused on PvP. And granted, you know, you can say, oh, but it was a disaster because no one does PvP anymore and it completely killed the I mean, people didn't do PvP in the dual arena before either, so let's fucking be honest with ourselves there. But yeah, like, usually the old school team always tries to reshape things or tries to like give a different spin on them or tries to address it with, you know, quality of life updates or some stuff. Like Shades of Morton, you know, Shades of Morton wasn't that popular, but there were a couple of people doing it, so they just sort of went in, oh, okay, let's actually retouch here the dungeon, and now you get the keys, and now you like, you know, do the minigame itself, and even offer some like new rewards, you know, so even though it's not like the most popular piece of content, it's a piece of content that you can do that has, you know, has been modernized, you know, like you don't have all of the hassles that you do like in RuneScape 3, where that piece of content is still sitting there just catching dust pretty much, and that's kind of like the thing. In old school you don't really have content being removed, whereas in RuneScape 3 it just seems so frequent. Even a few months ago they removed another mini game. And here, it's not just the Lumbridge Crater that got removed today, it was also the Nexus minigame getting removed, which I am, again, look, okay, I'm gonna be honest, it wasn't like the best minigame and it wasn't like the best piece of content or whatever, but at the same time I think that a lot of that is due to the fact that that minigame, as far as I know, as far as I remember, that minigame got introduced in 2013, if I'm not mistaken. It pretty much, like, outside of maybe one or two QOL updates, like, and very like, and when I say QOL, I really mean like super minor like changes, it never got touched. It never got modernized, it never got moved to a better place, it never got, you know, there was never an attempt to like, you know, make it better or add some rewards, just nothing, zero. For 12 years, it stayed there, that was it, right? And I think it's by far the thing that annoys me the most about content removal in RuneScape 3 is the fact that there seems to be such a little to no attempt from jagex's side to, you know, do anything about it. You know, like, to me it just sort of creates a problem with you know, like, getting attached to content, because, and that's kind of the point that I want to get out of the way at the beginning, so if you don't want to see me rant about it afterwards, you can turn it off, I guess, but the point that I kind of want to make in this video is more about, like, I think removing content is actually unhealthy for the game. Like, unless it's a last resort where you've tried to work around, like, again, current favor. jagex tried their best to, you know, smoothen the curve of earning current favor, you know, adding different ways to earn current favor and everything, and, you know, they tried, but they, you know, reached the conclusion that, okay, this thing has been in game for like 8 years, it clearly hasn't worked out, the players still don't like it, you know, and I think they could have done more changes to favor to make it much smoother to earn and everything, you know, but at the same time, look, you don't really have this type of system anywhere else in the game, players don't really like it, so I think it is healthier for the game if we just remove it. There I understand, right? But stuff like the Lumbridge Crater, you know, because the thing about favor, the thing about current favor, and the reason is why I understand jagex removal, or the dual arena even, again, I don't consider dual arena removal because it just got replaced, but the thing is, the reason is why I'm not upset about current favor is because you did need current favor to get access to a lot of the good rewards current had to offer. And players, every time especially you had to like start an Ironman or whatever, they just dreaded having to go through the, earning current favor. It was just like a nightmare basically, right? It was completely annoying. And, Current and Zaya as a whole, if you still remember that name, Zaya as a whole has changed a lot throughout the years to accommodate for players and be a better place to be at, and nowadays I would argue it's a pretty good piece of land, and we'll touch on that a little bit later as well, but like that, there's been an attempt made. So in old school RuneScape, when you do pieces of content, even if they're outdated or even if they're not like super popular or whatever, that there's a higher likelihood that the team will grab that piece of content and make it better or give some cool rewards or whatever, rather than just removing it. Whereas in RuneScape 3, if you do a piece of content that is not meta or that is not popular, why should you? Because chances are it's gonna be removed from the game, right? Like in a few years, because that's how they do things, right? So that's, and like, that just creates such a bad thing for the game, because it's like, why should I then be invested in anything in the game? Why should I be invested in any piece of content, any piece of story, any piece of lore, if, 5 years, 10 years from now, they're just gonna change it and, not even acknowledge it happened? Not even give a flying fuck about what happened? Like, it just feels such a, like, arbitrary thing. It's, it's sort of like, you live in the moment, right? RuneScape 3 is very like, you live in the moment. You sort of just do the content in the moment, and it has no bearing for the future of you playing the game whatsoever. And I think that's incredibly harmful for the game, because it makes it hard for me to get invested into any piece of content, because I know that, again, unless it's popular, unless it's meta, it's just probably gonna be removed someday. So what's the fucking point of doing it? There's no fucking point. So as a whole, I'm just not a huge fan of it. So yeah, that's basically like the gist of it. Now I want to get into like a couple points, more specific points, a little bit more about like the renting aspect, I guess, of this rumble. First of all, I think that a lot of people don't necessarily have a problem with the, I guess, removal of it. I think people have a problem with how the removal was made. I think that's the main thing, right? Because take Treasure Enter, for example. I find it incredibly funny that the vote passed, and they essentially just turned, yeah, we're gonna keep Treasure Enter open, we're gonna keep promotions going, right? Because obviously we have promotions scheduled, we cannot all of a sudden just say, oh, players don't want this shit, okay, let's disable it then. Because it's so much dev time to just not allow people to buy keys anymore, so much dev time, so much dev time to not run promotions anymore, apparently, right? It's such a, the dev time, dude, you don't even imagine the dev time, which I find incredibly ironic, because this is coming from the same CEO that had no fucking problem wasting dev time by removing Pride, because in old school RuneScape, Pride was well underway, most of the content was already designed, some of the rewards were already in the process of being designed as well, and what did he do? Exactly, he just told everyone to delete it. And then we had a week where we had 0 updates because he decided to waste a bunch of dev time. Which is why I don't buy the excuse with Treasure Enter not being disabled, because, oh, but the dev time, guys, it would take dev time to disable it, and we don't want to delay removing it, right, guys? Bullshit. Fucking bullshit. Right, you have no fucking problem wasting dev time when that shit is useful to you, right, when it comes to, for example, the removal of Pride. So it's an excuse that personally I don't fucking buy, alright? That's the first thing. And by the way, clearly we already see a pattern, because it seems that it's much easier for jagex to just delete things than to, work with them and actually make things that mean something, because that takes a lot of fucking effort, right? But deleting them is much fucking easier, if there's a problem, oh yeah, just remove that. Fucking people don't like this? Remove it. Oh, that piece of content's broken? Remove it. Who gives a shit about doing anything with the pieces of content that you made? Ultimately, the pieces of content you made mean fucking 0 for the game. They don't mean anything. And I think that's part of the problem here, is that RuneScape 3 has this sort of mentality of move fast, break things. Right? You just make content, 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 and then that leads to, some content just not being used as much by players, or, oftentimes just leads to older content that was released by earlier being outdated and just catching dust, and ultimately that's the thing, why fix the old content when you can just, oh, here's a new shiny piece of content instead, right? And that's kind of what happens a lot with RuneScape 3, and has been happening for like, over a decade at this point. It's this idea where it's like, oh, like, we could go back and, fix old pieces of content and make them worthwhile and show that when we did introduce them to the game, we actually had a point on them being introduced to the game, we had a reason for them being introduced in the game, and we feel like they belong into the game. Nah, fuck that, bro, just new piece of content. Oh, people don't like that anymore? New pieces of content. Oh, new content. Oh, people aren't doing that boss anymore. New boss, have you seen our new boss? Oh, new boss. Hey, here's a new boss, right? It just feels like everything is put into the game without any care or thought about it, which in turn makes it hard for me to give a shit about it, right? It's such a frustrating thing. It's like, and the thing that annoys me the most is, like, bro, RuneScape 3 has a lot of, and I mean a lot of pieces of content. There are catching dust, there are death content, that are outdated. They're actually really good, they are very fun, they are interesting to engage with. Or, when they're not, completely forgotten and outdated, they're dailies instead. Take the 16 caches, for example. Great minigame. Oh, you can only do it twice a day because they shower you with XP? Well, too bad, right? Or take the Evil Tree, Fish Flingers, and then, like, there's some stupid shit as well, like, bro, I'll probably make a video about, like, the daily escape aspect of RuneScape 3, because it gets ridiculous at points, but even the stupid random rune sphere at RuneSpan has a fucking daily limit. Even that has like, basically, RuneScape 3 either exists to release content that is gonna be forgotten in 3 months, or release content that is completely overpowered, make it a daily, so players feel like they need to do it every day, in order to not be quote-unquote dead content, instead of, just doing what old school RuneScape does and create, stuff that actually belongs in specific parts of the game, because there's a purpose for the things being designed. It's so fucking bizarre, man. It's like, it feels like a lot of the content is not even, like, thought out, or, like, it feels like, oh well, this is fun, cool, let's introduce it. Okay, how is this gonna impact the game? Oh, we don't know, doesn't matter. Just introduce that piece of code. Who gives a fuck about how it's gonna impact the game or anything else? It's just very, very fucking bizarre. It's a very weird way to, like, make the game, and I just don't like it. As for the Lumbridge crater itself, I honestly, especially because, like, okay, so first of all, I think this needs a bit of context. A couple of months ago, Tuska, yeah, that's the name of the god. Basically, there's a god called Tuska, which, like, big lore thing, whatever. Point being, there was an event because Tuska's gonna invade RuneScape and, like, destroy it, or invade Gillinor and destroy it. Players dealt with it. Tuska's body fell into the ocean, and it was there that you could go to Masca, which is a place where you, like, have raids, and you have, well, ironically, a bunch of daily content, because that place is either raids or daily content, and I think even raids are, like, time-gated weekly when it comes to the rewards you can get, so, yeah, cool stuff. Anyway, the entire thing had a minigame called the Anima Islands. Now, in order to, quote-unquote, declutter the ocean, which they're not the ones that are gonna get sailing, so I don't even know why the fuck you need to declutter the ocean, but fine. In order to declutter the ocean, they wanted to remove the body, which most people are like, okay, that's fine. And so they moved the world window, the place where you can access Masca with, to the desert, to, like, a little camp in the desert. That's all fine, completely fine. But they removed the Anima Islands, which granted wasn't a minigame that a lot of people did, and a lot of the rewards were accessible elsewhere in the game, but still, it was decent. I think there was even, like, a fucking chunk account, Iron Man thing that was using it to train their stats, and they just outright removed it. They didn't bother to understand, okay, why aren't people engaging with it anymore, is there anything that we can do, are there any pain points we can address, can we just maybe move it to Mascap, so we, declare the part of the ocean or whatever. No, just entirely removed. And they did the exact same shit here. Now, why is the Lumbridge crater so important to people? Basically, it's where the first battle of the God Saga happened, between Ceradomin and Zamorak, right? Because they wanted the, like, thing from, like, the Gothics thing, because, like, I don't know, it's some, like, Gothics lore thing, because a lot of the God Saga Gothics is like these powerful weapons that he discovered in his travels, and some gods also have theirs, and like Saradomin and Zamorak wanted to fight for one of them, and that's why the like Lumbridge thing happened, something along those lines. I don't remember the lore very well, but it's something along those lines. And the thing is, in this event, this wasn't just like an event, this was the event. Like, spoilers, Saradomin won, but Saradomin winning actually like changed the narrative because Saradomin won, right? And it was an event that you could actually like gather resources or whatever it was, or killing enemies or whatever from the other army, and like you'd gain points for your faction. So essentially, it was a thing that players were actually involved in, and depending on who won, you would actually change the narrative, especially because of the entire Saliska thing and the Saliskan game, like little games or whatever it was that you had to like qualify or whatever. Fun fact, that's how Bandos ended up being killed, because basically there was a fight with Armadil and Bandos lost. So yeah, so you know, like you have sort of these events that are actually you know, game changing pretty much. And essentially, that's also what happened here, and that's why for a lot of people the creator has a lot of significance. It's not just, you know, oh yeah, it's because of lore, it's because this is like an actual event that happened. People participated in it, it changed the narrative of the game, it influenced the story going forward, right? So it's a pretty big deal for a lot of people, you know, so... You know, a lot of people find a lot of importance in this. Now, what's the problem here? The problem, as I stated at the beginning of the video, wasn't necessarily that the creator is being removed, it's how it's being removed. Because contrary to other pieces of content or anything like that, jagex didn't ask, okay, how should we go about this or anything like that. And that is so dumb to me, because clearly a lot of people just really give a shit about it. A lot of people do care about this thing. So for them to just erase it as if nothing happened just feels like a slap in the face. It feels like, oh, you got really invested into this narrative? Guess what? We don't give a shit. We don't care it ever happened. Fuck off. You know, like it does feel like that to a lot of people. And I don't even particularly care that much about the narrative, by the way. You know, like I found the quests fun, but outside of the quests I didn't really care that much for a lot of these events, even if I did participate in them, right? But it does feel like that. And it's really weird because the entire God Saga, look, I know, it has a lot of problems, really ambitious, some under-delivering of things, I get all of that. But at the same time, one of the main things that the God Saga did well was make people be invested into the narrative by making them actively part of that narrative. Be it through these events that would actually, like, you know, change the narrative and everything, or quests that were influenced by said events. So, you know, when you invest people like that, you're telling me that throughout the entire God Saga, you didn't learn the lesson that, hey, maybe whenever we want to make changes in the game that will affect the world like this, where, you know, the creator is gonna disappear, for example, that we can, like, make a fucking event, a world event, or like a quest or something like that, where we remove this, in fact, and to sort of, you know, like, imagine that instead of just removing this, you had like an event where people would fix the creator. Right? Rather than trying to erase the past, which is something that jagex has been trying to do. I don't know why they've been trying to, like, somewhat almost, you know, undo the God Saga as if it was like this huge mistake, you know, and like erase it for some reason. Instead, what if you acknowledge it happened, and then you have quests where you heal the mistakes of what happened backwards, so you can move on into the future. And, you know, filling up the crater would be part of that. Where rather than just removing the crater, you fill the crater, you plant trees and everything to make the forest in the backyard of, you know, Lumbridge Castle, you know, come back. You give it some lore importance because of, you know, the look of Lumbridge or whatever wanted the forest and planted the forest because of his wife or whatever the fuck, right? You know, and in order to heal old wounds and, you know, take a look at the future instead, so you can finally move on, you would fill up the crater. You would solve the problem with the crater being there, and you would actually, like, involve the players affecting it. Meaning that for the players, for us, it feels like, oh, okay, you did learn a lesson from the God Saga. This entire thing where narratives and players affect narratives and everything, oh shit, you're using that now to move to the future, without, you know, wanting to erase what happened during the God Saga. You know, like, it would have made it feel like, okay, sure, look, you think that the creator shouldn't be around, fine by us, but you showed that you did give a shit about it. But just outright removal Just feels like, yeah, none of it matters. And jagex has been doing a lot of that, a lot of like, it feels like, like they don't want to acknowledge that the God Saga ever happened. You know, like it's this huge mistake, this huge stain in RuneScape 3. And again, look, I think the God Saga had a lot of problems. That's true, it did have a lot of problems. But you really want to acknowledge that it didn't happen? Do you really want to like try and erase it? I just don't understand that mentality, you know? And especially the excuse of decluttering to me is like the worst one as well. You know, primarily because, like, look, when I look at the forest behind the Lumbridge castle, and I look at the crater, you're telling me that the crater looks more cluttered than the fucking forest? You know what I mean? Like, don't get me wrong, I think a lot of places in the game have a lot of cluttering, and this comes from the fact that, contrary to Zeo, which I already talked about, RuneScape 3 just has this fucking insistence of not wanting to create new pieces of land to put content in, so a lot of shit just ends up being super fucking cluttered, right? And I'm not saying that, oh, you know, they shouldn't try and fix the cluttering, I think they should. But at the same time, and while in Lumbridge there were some places like the market, that is, I don't know why the fucking market exists in RuneScape 3, like in old school it's just a general store and then you have the sheep pen right after. It works fine, I don't know why the fuck you have a market in RuneScape 3 in Lumbridge, but the market is still there, don't worry. The crater fucked off basically, but the market is still there, guys. You know, it just goes to show how much they give a shit about the game, I guess. But still, as I was saying, like, do you really want to convince me that you look at the fucking forest and you look at the crater and you say that the crater feels more cluttering than the fucking forest? I can understand some players logging into the game and being like, why the fuck is there a huge crater, you know, behind Lumbridge Castle? But I don't think that's ever like immersion breaking or anything like that for players. Since when is it? Like, I don't, like, from all of the things that I've heard people coming into RuneScape 3 and complaining about when it comes to first player experience, the fucking crater is like nowhere near like top 5, not even top 10, I would say. Like, for example, one of the things that RuneScape 3 players find really overwhelming is the fact that they get spammed with chat messages about like fucking daily scape content. Like, oh, you know, sinkholes are happening and caches are happening and, oh, will the flash events are happening, guys? You know, like there's this thing, you know, like it's so fucking much. That's why I have most of them disabled. Because it's so many goddamn chat messages, right? Like, why don't you focus on fixing that first? To me, what really seems to be happening here, it's nostalgia bait. Like, it really is nostalgia bait. Again, I'm not saying that Lumbridge doesn't need to be decluttered. A lot of places need to be decluttered around the game. But, like, you're fucking telling me that, you know, you have this entire marketing scheme about removing Treasure Hunter. And then you fucking make this big deal about, guys, we're also gonna return the initial point to Lumbridge. And then you make Lumbridge look like pre-OC times? That to me just really sounds like a fucking nostalgia bait. Because again, like a lot of the things don't even fucking matter all that much. By the way, the M hideout doesn't even have the fucking M logo, so really, what's the fucking point? You know? Like, bro, are you fucking serious about this? But you know, it is what it feels to me, you know? And again, like, most people aren't even necessarily, oh, you're declaring Lumbridge, you know, and that's a bad thing. No, the problem is most people are like, bro, you just fucking removed pieces of content, replaced them with pre-EOC content, and you called it a day. Like, the problem is how they went about removing the stuff from the world, rather than just, you know, changing stuff around the world. It's just overall very bizarre, and granted, we are going to have a new continent in 2026, but quite frankly, knowing that it's jagex, probably they're gonna try and do well, we're releasing a lot of content, because usually RuneScape 3 doesn't half-release stuff like old school, right? So like if RuneScape 3 did there, they wouldn't do with old school did, where it's like, okay, first we have Korean, and then we're gonna introduce like, we're gonna rework a couple of things there by introducing more content and more quests, and then we're gonna introduce Kevo's Lowlands, and then you're gonna have like the Valormore, and then we're gonna have different pieces of Valormore being released later. No, it's like, here's the entire fucking continent. That's it. All of the content already released, we can move on to the next piece of content. Which is why I also say that a lot of content in RuneScape 3 does feel like it's just content that is being released rather than having a purpose in the game. And that's what I'm afraid when it comes to the new continent. Because is it gonna be the same thing where they should release a huge continent with a bunch of content for you to do that 5 years from now is gonna be fucking useless? Most of it's gonna be that you know what I mean? Like, again, that's why when I said that I don't believe that the removal of Treasure Enter is gonna bring people back into the game, this is what I mean by that. Because removing Treasure Enter is not gonna reteach the fucking people making decisions of how to make content and how to release content into the game and what goals that content should have. Right? That's something that you have to change over time. And the removal of Treasure Enter is not gonna do that. And you're not gonna change that if you're gonna keep pulling shit like this. And quite frankly, I don't think that making a game like this is gonna help you grow the game, regardless if you have Treasure Enter or not. You need to worry about making a better game, and that comes from being careful with what you do in the game. You know, as much as I hate the fucking bureaucracy of old school RuneScape of you need to poll everything and most of the updates aren't even that exciting because you already know everything that's gonna come through the update in terms of rewards and everything, at the same time, they do have to do their due diligence with the content that comes into the game because the content needs to have a purpose, it needs to have a space in the game, right? That's their motto, that's the thing that they do, and I think RuneScape 3 should do the same thing rather than just being, well, release new content, you know, and obviously part of the blame is also the players, because players will cry for new content way more often than actually like trying to understand that sometimes that's just not viable. I remember the debacle with Necromancy, bro, like people got like 200 mil XP in like the first fucking 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then they were like, oh, where's the content, jagex? We ran out of fucking content, and I'm sitting there like, bro, you rushed 200 mil Necromancy XP, and you're crying that you don't have more content. How the fuck is that jagex's fault, that you just speedrun through the fucking content they offered you? You know what I mean? Like, RuneScape 3 players also fucking need to chill on that regard. But it is a lot in that idea, I guess. I'm also really curious what the fuck they're gonna do with Birthorpe, because Birthorpe has a lot of like skilling tutors and everything. Personally, I prefer RuneScape 3's Birthorpe to old school RuneScape. Old school RuneScape Birthorpe and Taverley just look incredibly empty, comparatively speaking, to RuneScape 3, so I think they should just grab the tutors, place them around the world, you know, separately, around especially the free-to-play area for players to stumble across them more organically and learn how to do the skills more organically, and just leave Birthorpe and Taverley as they are, because, you know, I also don't think it's necessarily that hard for players to, like, reach there. If anything, just increase the levels of the things there a little bit and call it a day. Because, again, because I'm really afraid now that I'm just gonna fucking revert Birthorpe and Taverley and call it a day and be like, oh, see, guys, you know, it's like old school RuneScape, guys. Aren't we an amazing game? We're learning from old school RuneScape. But instead of learning the good lessons from old school RuneScape, they're actually just fucking copying the game, which is not learning from them, right? It's just kind of weird. And the thing is, like, because in terms of solutions, right, it's not like people didn't give a fuckload of solutions. You know, again, aside the fact that jagex just seemed so fucking quick at making this decision after the marketing, you know, vote that they did, to me it just seems like it's nostalgia bait, because why don't they just like, okay, clearly there's a lot of people saying that they do like the creator and that they want it to stay, okay, what can we do to like appease both parties, to like remove the creator but also not make it so it feels like completely fucking useless? And some players had really great suggestions. You know, like, I think they could have done a quest where, or an event where, you know, they fill back the hole and then, you know, leave like the lake, for example, in the even though, I'm gonna be honest, I like the crater. The current crater looks pretty fucking beautiful. You know, it's a fucking space where you can just like chill. It's honestly one of the best graphical spaces in the game, in my opinion, so I don't understand why the fuck they prefer to have a bunch of trees there. But hey, you know, I mean, there's already trees in the crater in the old version anyway, so there's that. But, you know, some players were like, oh, you know, maybe you can do like, once you start the World Awakes quest, which is the quest that starts like the 6th stage and the God Saga, you know, like the world changes. You know, and then once you finish, I think it's Succession is the last quest of the God Saga, the world changes back, you know? Like, I think that's a good compromise. The people that like the hole and the crater and shit like that can still have it like that, right? And then the people that don't, it will revert back anyway. And for new players, they don't have to worry about like the cluttering of having a crater there with like a little nice lake and, you know, some trees for shade, right? Because they're not there yet. They haven't reached that point yet. So it would be a nice compromise, you know? Like, I don't know, like, especially the thing is, the decluttering just seems like a weird excuse to remove pieces of content. You know, it's just like, again, like, with current favor. Okay, the favor is actually, you know, preventing people from accessing good pieces of content. But here it's just like, oh yeah, it looks busy. The place looks busy with a crater, you know? Okay, like, okay, cool. And not to mention the Nexus, again, like, I don't think it was that great of a minigame or whatever, but I also do think the RuneScape 3 has so much shit content that I think should be removed, and it's not, you know? And I mean, in a way, good thing it isn't. I prefer content to fucking be reworked rather than removed. I don't understand why they just didn't move the Nexus, especially because as a training method, especially thematically, it looks like it would fit in like Mauritania, or like the swamp of Mauritania or something like that, right? Like thematically, it would fit like that vibe, you know, just make the XP rates, adjust the XP rates a little bit, make it so you can use your own bones, and if you use your own bones, you get more XP or some shit, give it like a little nice prayer outfit or something, you know, or something, like, I don't know, like, there's so much you could do with it, and I don't know, like, removing it just it looks so fucking cheap, in my opinion, right? You know, and then they kept the market. I don't know why they kept the market. I'm sorry, I'm a fucking market hater. I don't understand why the fuck they make the market, or like why they made the market to begin with and why they kept it. It's just a little bit weird, you know. So it's just it's so fucking bizarre, you know. It's really just bizarre.